It's getting late early in Buffalo. The Oilers have 10 third-line forwards, and we have Olympic updates for Milan next February.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. I am Nick Zararis, the host of Locked On Oilers. That is my good friend and one of the co-hosts of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. And we want to thank everyone that is making Locked On NHL their first listen of the day. Locked On NHL is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your teams covered every single day. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Get to an NHL game soon. So, Hunter, my friend, we have a whole lot to get to. There were a few segments on the chopping block for today. So we're going to start out talking about Buffalo's huge win last night that they desperately needed over, I would say, an injury-riddled Ottawa team that is in a weird spot right now. Our second segment, we're going to talk about the fact the Oilers have 12 forwards who are probably between second and third liners. And then in our final segment, we'll talk about the Olympic updates we got from Gary Bettman about the facility, when rosters will be due, and a whole lot more. So to get into it, Hunter, I'm going to start out with, I've always loved that expression. It's getting late early out there is one of the great turns of phrase that's ever been born. You know, Yogi Berra, one of the great sages of professional sports, one of the great baseball players of all time. And we all know that feeling. You know, it's the second week of the season, and we've all been there where it feels like, oh my God, it's not even Halloween and the season's over. And for the Sabres fans who were at their home opener with paper bags over their heads, chanting to fire the general manager who brought a coach who hasn't coached the team in 20 years back purely as a nostalgia play to lead a team after another disappointing season. It is a really, really awkward situation in Buffalo. But for one night, at least, everything was okay. You hang an 8th spot, even if it's against a bad team, even if that team's missing their best or second best player, you get to take a deep breath. You get to revel in the win. They have a long way to go, and we have a lot of hockey left to be played. But for one night, Buffalo is alive.
First off, I wouldn't say, Ottawa's bad. They're just missing a couple of their dudes, especially Brady Tkachuk. I think they're going to be fine in the long run this year. But that was still a much-needed win for a Sabres team that only had 2 goals in 3 games to open the year, Nick. And you're right. They were boos throughout the arena in their home games, chanting for, the GM to be fired. He's still under a lot of pressure, by the way. This one win was huge, but he's still under quite a bit of pressure. And, the Sabres, they need to start building on this. Nick, it's been over a decade since they've been in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's crazy because this fan base up there is fantastic. They go to all the games. And they keep seeing, the same things over and over and over again. They had the rebuild, that didn't work. And then this is the rebuild from that rebuild, and that hasn't worked. And, it's just, they got to get going here, because if they don't, I don't know if Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin are going to be around much longer. I really do think they could ask out and ask for a trade to go to a Stanley Cup contender, because, you can't accept losing for that long. Sooner or later, your best players are going to want to go play meaningful games that, March, April, May hockey and all that. So it's a big win for them, but there's still a long way to go there.
So in building off of that, it's not just about this moment immediately. You have to examine this within the greater context. And they've started the year with Alex Lyon as their starter because Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is hurt. And they don't feel great about Devin Levy yet, who has played pretty well in the AHL for much of the last 2 years, but is somebody who we're waiting to see if he's a guy. We all know how good he was at Northeastern, put together one of the great college hockey goalie seasons of the 21st century a couple of years ago. But on top of that, they traded for Josh Norris last year, somebody who has had a hard time staying healthy in his career. He's presently out for them. Yeah. And then on the Lindy Ruff thing, Since 2016 as a head coach, so 10 years, obviously not a head coach in all of those periods. He was an assistant coach with the Rangers for a couple seasons in there. Over the last 10 years as a head coach, so I think it's 7 seasons, 10 as a head coach, a .484 points percentage, one singular playoff appearance in that window. If you recall, he was with the Stars before taking that, the career rehab as an assistant with the Rangers. Had a pretty good Stars team there. The late embers of that Sagan, Ben, Klingberg window. And it's hard for me to feel like Lindy Ruff, who has been in the game forever, is the right coach for a team that is trying to, redefine who it is. And I think this is something I talk about a lot when it comes to teams like the Giants, the Yankees, to some extent, the football Giants, not the baseball Giants. When you get caught up in your own history, hell, I say this about the Rangers too, trying to, relive your history, to capture past glories. At a certain point, history is history. Lindy Ruff and the Sabres had a really good run of it in the late 90s and the early 2000s. They went to a Stanley Cup final. They came within a goal of winning the Stanley Cup against the Dallas Stars. But that's 20 years ago. Do you understand how different the NHL is now versus then? I think there is a world where there is a coach out there. And don't ask me who, because I haven't thought that far ahead. There is a coach somewhere out there in the world that I think could coach this Sabres team to the postseason. I think if you had an upper echelon coach in this position, there is somebody who could get this group right there. I'm not saying win the Stanley Cup, go on a run. I'm saying could get them to the bubble, and if things break right for them, they could make the playoffs. I don't have that confidence in Lindy Ruff based on the track record, both with the Devils who have a really talented team.
They won in spite of him.
Yes,
by the way.
Yes. The year they went to the second round and lost to Carolina, every Devils fan I am friends with was complaining about Lindy Ruff the entire season, that he wasn't managing the lines well, he wasn't utilizing players to their skill sets, he was running a weird defensive combinations. A coach has not a ton of influence in the NHL, but this is one of the cases where I think going from a bottom 5 coach to even a middle teens, the 12th best coach in the NHL, can make a huge difference.
They went for the nostalgia hire, and it just hasn't worked out so far. And, you see that with other sports teams as well. There's a saying in a book I read about a year ago. Nick, it's a Star Wars book. I have it back here on my shelf here. A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller. And one of the characters says, forget the old way. That's kind of what the Sabres have to do here. You got to forget the old way here and bring in some fresh blood. Now, I get what you're saying when it comes to there's a coach out there that can get them to a bubble. But I still feel like the Sabres need a big culture change as well. This has been, I hate saying this, but it's true. It feels like it's been a culture of losers for a decade plus.
Ryan O'Reilly. Think about what Ryan O'Reilly said. Playing for the Sabres made me stop loving hockey.
And once that losing culture gets into your locker room, it spreads. It's like a disease, and it takes a long time to get rid of. And you've seen that here. So this isn't I don't think for me, it's just a simple head coaching hire. You got to change the culture around this entire organization because they've just been perennial losers for the last decade plus. Once the culture changes, then you'll see them, I think, start winning some more games. I really think that, this has been a team that has been trying to learn how to win again for, a good chunk of my life. I'll say that. So they got to get back to figuring that out. I definitely think a new coach would help, but the culture has really got to change there, and they got to forget the old way.
Can I interest you in a lightly used Chris Drury to take over from whenever you fire this general manager? Please, Buffalo, if you want to go full nostalgia, you got to buy in.
But that's also the thing with Kevin Adams, though. I don't think he's doing a good job. The owner there is also a really big issue. They do a good job with the Buffalo Bills. They do not do a good job with the Sabres, and that needs to change.
No, they don't care about the Sabres. You can tell they don't care about the Sabres. They are keeping Kevin Adams in that job to take the blame, to be the punching bag, to deflect attention from the fact that Pagulas have owned this team for this long, and the arena is falling apart. The team isn't very good, and that's a lot to try and entice people to come. I mean, I saw people on Twitter last night posting that you could get into the game against the Senators last night for like $6. And look, I'm all for accessibility, and that's a good thing that people can afford to go, but that's not a great indicator of fan support right now that the demand is that low. We are going to take our first break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the Edmonton Oilers have 10 second and third line forwards and not a whole lot of goal scoring yet. Be right back. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss, because right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use on the FanDuel app. I love using FanDuel because it gives you so many ways to play. You can put together a parlay to squad ride together, watch games with your friends. You can try player props, or if you feel the momentum shifting in a game while you're watching, live betting makes it happen. Tonight, we have the Unction Hunter Steelers going to Cincinnati to take on Joe Flacco. What am I talking about? Joe Flacco for the Bengals. The Steelers, 5.5-point road favorites. And then Sunday morning for the early crowd, the Rams going to London to play the Jaguars. And what is ostensibly a Jaguars home game, where the Rams, 9 hours from their home base, are 3-point road favorites. Be sure to visit FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app, and take your chance to win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out with Hunter and I on this Thursday edition of Locked On NHL as we are making our way through the stories around the league. And I wanted to talk about the Oilers because when I went to the game on Tuesday against the Rangers, I was just stunned to see how much the lineup had changed in 48 hours. They signed Jack Roslovic off the street. By the end of that game, he's playing on the second line with Leon Draisaitl. Trent Frederick, who had been on the first line with McDavid and Draisaitl through the first two games, was the third line center by the end of the Ranger game. Vasily Podkolzin and Kasperi Kapanen, two of the Chris Knobloch scholarship alumni, are playing effectively a really good checking line with Trent Frederick. You still have Ike Howard and Matthew Savoy trying to figure out what they're going to be on the wings of Adam Henrique. Oh yeah, and you have Mangiapane, who has 3 points in 3 games after being a fourth liner for the Capitals last year. Beyond McDavid and Draisaitl, there are no guarantees, and Zach Hyman's still probably at least 3 to 4 weeks away from returning. I don't think he's eligible to return till November 4th or 5th because of the way the number of games shake out. But the Oilers have a lot of third line guys, and they're going to try and figure this out. And I really struggle to think of a team that's tried to build a lineup this way. You know, last year had shades of this, but like Jeff Skinner's been a top 6 player most of his career. Victor Arvidsson's been a top 6 player most of his career. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, I think coming off of last year, my expectations for him are a little bit lower, but this is a very weird lineup.
It definitely is. And it's crazy that it took this long for Jack Roslovic to be signed by an NHL team. I don't understand it, Nick. He had a 22-goal season last year for the Carolina Hurricanes. He only played in 1 game. I feel like with the lineup that they have no choice but to put him in the top 6, to just let him cook up there. You can put him with McDavid. You can put him with Draisaitl. Either one, just it really doesn't matter to me. Again, he had almost a 40-point season in 81 games last year for the Carolina Hurricanes. Mangiapane, I like that signing a lot for them over the offseason. He had a really nice year last year in Washington. But, you know, we're still waiting for McDavid to score his first goal of the year. He has 4 points in 3 games. That's going to come very soon. But, you know, Henrique, he has 1 goal in 3 games. Trent Frederick has 1 goal in 3 games. It feels like this is like open season / tryouts for some players in the top 6. That's the vibe I kind of get when I look at this lineup up and down, Nick. And by the time we get to the trade deadline, I wouldn't be shocked to see them kind of go big game hunting if they're able to try and go and get a bona fide top 6 winger to slide some of these other forwards down the lineup a little bit more. I think they could still be a little bit deeper going into the playoffs this year, but there's definitely a lot of intrigue here. Again, I love the Roslovic move. I like the Mangiapane move. They lost a lot of depth from last year's team, but there's definitely some good potential options here, especially if Howard and Savoy are able to hit. They have no points so far in their first 3 NHL games, but if they're able to hit throughout the year, that could also be really huge for them.
It's weird because when it comes to a guy like Roslovic, we can all look at him and we can identify this guy is really good at two things. He's really fast in a straight line. He's got a sick shot.
Yeah.
Anything other than that, he cannot do. He cannot forecheck. He cannot play defense. He cannot hit. He can't kill penalties. He can't win faceoffs. But those two traits, being able to shoot and being able to skate, will keep you around. You know, on the other day on Locked On Oilers, I had said, this is basically Jeff Skinner 5 years ago. And he doesn't have the 30-goal seasons that Jeff Skinner did, but that's effectively the skill set. And you had said it. This is a guy that if he's going to be in your lineup, he needs to be in your top six. He cannot be on your fourth line playing 11, 12 minutes a game because he will not be able to do a whole lot in those minutes, especially with the types of players he would play with in that capacity. And going off of that, I think somebody like Mangiapane is really interesting because we saw the extreme high-end version of him that one season in Calgary, the 30-goal season when the Flames were one of the best teams in hockey. They pushed for the President's Trophy. They had the Tkachuk, Lindholm, Gaudreau line, which was the best line in hockey. And since then, he's tried to reassemble it. He's tried to find glimmers of it. And that's not to say he's been bad. I think Mangiapane is kind of the best-case scenario for the veteran the coach likes too much, that his skill set isn't great, but your coach trusts him a lot, so he's going to play in your top six. He's going to kill penalties. He might get on your first power play unit if things are desperate. And when you have the high floor of a high motor skater, a strong forechecker, and somebody who's going to win a lot of loose pucks, and you get to drop that next to McDavid or Draisaitl, who are going to command so much attention in the offensive zone, he's going to stumble his way backwards into 35, 40 points just by being in the right place at the right time. And I think this is kind of the best case scenario from what we saw maybe in the late 2010s version of the Oilers, where it was guys like Lucic, Zach Kassian, where they would just keep dropping guys next to McDavid and next to Draisaitl and say, make that guy an NHL player. Mangiapane is an NHL player. He is good enough. So in having him next to one of those guys, you're giving him a really high floor. Now, as to your point, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, you need another top six forward in here if this team's going to go where it wants to go, because Mangiapane and Nugent Hopkins are not top six wingers on Stanley Cup championship caliber teams in 2025. They're just not.
Right. No, I agree. And Mangiapane, he still had a 14-goal, 28-point season last year in Washington. If you put someone like that in your bottom six, whether it's a third or fourth line role, and you get around 15 plus goals or even what he had last year, that's totally good for a Stanley Cup contender. It's funny. You brought up that with putting Mangiapane next to McDavid and Draisaitl. You know, Nick, it's funny. The Penguins, they put Justin Brazeau next to Evgeny Malkin to start the season, and they just said, hey, go out there, put your big ass in front of the net. And he's been doing that so far. He's also had some soft hands. He has 4 goals to start the season for the Penguins, even though he's never really been that much of a pure goal scorer in the NHL. He's on pace for 82 goals right now. So it's just funny, like the profile between those two players has been similar to start the year. So I just wanted to bring that comparison in just because I think it's been funny. But yeah, I feel like even with Hyman back, they're still a top 6 forward short. And I expect them to be decently aggressive. You have to go all in these next few years, especially now that McDavid gave you his word. He signed that extension. It's only for a few years, but they got to go as all in as they can, Nick, before he potentially changes his mind. We'll see.
It's a really interesting place to be for Edmonton because of the decisions they've made, the guys they've lost. Savoy, I think, is going to stick because he's been killing penalties. And even if he's only on the fourth line, I think his skill set's a little more well-rounded. I do think Ike Howard's going to end up in the AHL, and I think that's going to happen relatively soon. His minutes have declined game by game over 3. He finished Tuesday's game against the Rangers on the fourth line with Henrique and Savoy. I think based on how he plays and how he's used tonight against the Islanders, and Jake Wallman is supposed to make his season debut tonight against the Islanders. We'll see if that holds true. We are going to take our second and final break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. When we come back, how about a little Olympic talk? Hockey season is here, and there is nothing better than walking through the tunnel and getting hit by that stadium lighting and seeing the ice. But let's get real. Getting tickets for games can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where our friends at Game Time come in, the app that gives fans the ticket buying advantage. It's your ultimate hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets, fast, easy, and stress-free. I went Tuesday to Oilers Rangers. Saturday, I will be at Devils Oilers, and I got my tickets with Game Time, the best part of the Game Time ticket experience. My personal favorite part, the panoramic seat view. There are no surprises. You click on the tickets. It gives you a digital rendering of what the view from your seat will look like. No obstructed views, no funky angles, Game Time panoramic view. And if you're like me and you're hunting for a deal, for certain teams, you can find tickets for as cheap as, like we said in that first segment, $5. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. And Hunter, you may not believe this. I'm sure our audience will be very stunned. The Olympic Committee is having trouble finishing the logistics and the infrastructure of the Olympics on time. And if you're new to this, if you're not familiar with how the Olympics work, this is business as usual. There were very much articles about, is Sochi going to have the facilities ready a week before the Olympics? They were putting the finishing touches on the Olympic quarters for all of the athletes the week before the games in Russia. So right now, as we understand it, the arena that the main games, the important games, are going to be played at, the ice will not be tested until maybe the first game of the actual Olympics, which is minorly concerning. I didn't love Gary Bettman's attitude of, that's an Olympic problem, that's not our problem. I feel like you should maybe care just a little bit. And the thing is, and look, I understand I'm a podcaster. I am not the commissioner of the NHL. I don't have the operations or the logistical experience. Did you not see how juiced up everybody was for the Four Nations face-off? Do you not want to capitalize on the mainstream culture you touched for 2 weeks? And the Olympics are going to be really short. We're talking about 2 weeks in the middle of February, and that's it. You don't have a big time to make your impression, your footprint on the larger culture. The NHL needs to care about this a little bit more. And look, I understand the NHL itself isn't going to send people over there to construct the rink. They're not going to contract out workers to build the rink on time, but I would just appreciate if Gary would take this a little more seriously, because we've been talking about NHL players in the Olympics getting back there since 2014. So it would be nice if Gary cared about this, or at least gave the impression he cared about this as much as we do.
100% agree, but he's always been like this when it comes to Olympics, Nick. Like, this is no surprise. Like, come on, let's be real here. But I still feel like it's going to be fine at the end of the day, even though everything is maybe not going to be right, or everything is not going to be perfect, and maybe the ice isn't going to be that great. The players are still going to be insanely juiced up for this. Nick, there were people talking about during the Four Nations, are the players going to care? Like, this is just going to be like a glorified, exhibition thing. And then you see the first game, Nick, it's like, oh yeah, these players care, especially when they represent their country. It doesn't matter when it is or where it is. And considering that this will be the first time that the NHL goes to the Olympics in 12 years, this is still going to be quite the show. Even though there's plenty of questions about the facilities, we know this is nothing new. I'm excited to see a lot of new faces at the Olympics that have not gotten the chance to represent their countries since getting into the NHL. Like, Nick, for example, I can't wait to see Leon Draisaitl represent Team Germany at the Olympics next year. That is going to be freaking awesome. You have so many other players who haven't seen at the Olympic
That's a fun little team. Draisaitl, Stützle, and Mo Seider, that's a fun little team. And those secondary teams will be interesting. And officially,
Team Latvia, man, they're always pesky. They play fun. You're going to get Archer Shilov starting, and he's done really well for them at the World Championships, especially. So you all know who the top contenders are. But some of these teams a little below them, they're going to make it tough. So again, I can't wait. You saw today, this came out from Frank Saravalli. Lane Hudson, Thatcher Demko, and Brock Besser were listed among the skaters for the expanded preliminary Olympic roster after they didn't attend the Olympic orientation in August. So they're still getting a lot of consideration. Not surprised that Demko is, Nick, because he's off to one hell of a start. Hudson's playing well, just got his contract extension. But I'm still stoked for this, man. Like, this is going to be fantastic hockey. It's 12 years in the making. We haven't had this since you and I were basically in high school. So
high school juniors,
this has been needed, man. They are going to appeal to so many casual fans that have not gotten the chance to watch so many of these skilled players in the NHL. And I think it's going to be a massive hit.
It's a great opportunity. And that's what's always frustrated me about Gary and the league's perspective on the Olympics. The Olympics get you in front of the casual audience you crave so desperately. The people who are flicking channels who say, oh, the Olympics are on. And look, I understand the time difference is going to make this a little rough. A lot of these games are going to be in the morning and the early afternoon. You know, the thought of playing an Olympic gold medal hockey game at 2 p.m. on a weekday for the East Coast television audience is not great. But we all know our jobs when the Olympics are on are secondary because the Olympics are on. And then we know the official deadline for roster submission is December 31st.
Yes.
From what we have read, it seems like the NHL is trying to coordinate with the respective federations to do a staggered launch so all of the rosters don't come out at the same time. And that's good from a marketing perspective. And frankly, I am penciling us in for that Thursday of that week once the rosters are out for a very well-rounded and lively discussion about the merits of the selections. I, for one, am pessimistic we will see Lane Hudson or Luke Hughes make the final roster for Team USA. I am hopeful we will see Jake Sanderson, and that's kind of the flag I'm ready to plant right now in the middle of October. I want Jake Sanderson on this team, and I want him in the starting sixth defenseman. I know there's a lot of proclivity for some of the guys with more experience. I know Zach Werenski is coming off of a great year. Fine, play Jake Sanderson on the right. The American Olympic team needs to bring as many puck-moving, ambulatory defensemen who can skate to this. This is not normal hockey. This is not, we're playing dump it. This is the fastest hockey you will see. All six of your guys need to be able to skate and need to be able to move the puck.
I just don't want them to galaxy brain this, but Team USA has a history of doing that. We just got to go back to the 2016 World Cup where they decided to bring a bunch of gritty checkers against Team Canada who will just be like, okay, we're just going to bring all our speed and skill guys. Team USA needs to do that. This is the deepest USA team of our lifetimes, Nick. Seriously. Bring all the speed and skill guys. You can take a few lessons from the Four Nations. You don't need to bring some of those, no disrespect, Nick. You don't need to bring some of those former/current Rangers like Vince Trocheck or even Chris Kreider, for example. You can bring someone like
Kreider's at least off to a good start right now.
I would still rather have Tage Thompson than him.
For sure.
I would rather have Jason Robertson. I think Cole Caulfield potentially deserves a spot on this team. And please, for the love of God, play Kyle Connor in an elimination game. It's ridiculous that he did not get in that. But, you know, they're going to have Quinn Hughes this time. That's going to be massive. Didn't play in the Four Nations. They'll have McAvoy. I do not think they're going to galaxy brain Adam Fox, but again, they have a history of galaxy braining things. That would be ridiculous. And
you forget Chris Drury.
Go ahead.
You forget Chris Drury is the assistant general manager of this team. Adam Fox will be here and JT Miller will be here. And do not be surprised if one of Trocheck or Kreider finds their way onto this team. That's all I'm saying. Do not be surprised.
Tage Thompson won the gold at the Worlds this past summer.
Tage Thompson is one of the best 20 American hockey players in the world. I have no hesitation or reservation in saying that. He needs to be on this team, period.
Agreed. And, you know, Canada comes in as the favorite, and rightfully so. They are stacked at forward. Defensively, they're great. Goaltending is obviously still their biggest question. But, Nick, they really honestly just need average goaltending, and I think their elite talent is going to take care of the rest. But, you know, it's still going to suck not seeing Sasha Barkov represent his country. That's really going to suck. But, you know, Sweden's going to be great again. I'm excited for Germany. Czechia, always watch out for them. They're always fun to watch at the Olympics, too. I already said Latvia. Again, there's some pesky teams in there. Also, you know, Denmark is going to be there too. I'm excited for that. So This is going to be a really fun tournament, man.
Olympic hockey is as good as it gets. There is no better excuse to tell your boss, sorry, I didn't see that email, than hockey being on at 1:00 in the afternoon. And it's good hockey. It's not a matinee Sabres game on a holiday. It's actual, like all the games that were on Monday on Indigenous Peoples Day at 1:00 on a weekday. It was great to have that on, but real hockey, Olympic hockey will be great. That will do it for today's edition of Locked On NHL. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're Apple or Spotify listener, please give the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Let us know what you think as far as the Olympics and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL Game Night for you late night owls. Hunter and I will talk to you guys next week.